Few stories infuriate me more than the one you are about to hear on this week's show. A woman pleads with police. She is being stalked, harassed, threatened, repeatedly, week after week, for months. She does everything right, files complaints, applies for a restraining order, but her pleas fall on deaf ears. Law enforcement does nothing. Then one day, the situation goes from bad to worse to deadly. And then law enforcement steps up and, suddenly, wants to do its job. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. On Halloween night in 2023, 34-year-old Maria Roque had had enough. She is tired of being threatened and stalked and continually harassed by a man who, by all outward appearances and behaviors, seems to be escalating his actions with each new episode. And anyone who has listened to Crossing the Line for a while knows that when you have a violent offender who will not leave you alone, their behavior almost never de-escalates. It always escalates. Think of it as a tragic play, each act leading to the ultimate heartbreaking, tragic conclusion. Maria saw and recognized this, which is why she walks into the Chicago Police Department with photos, threatening text messages, and even videos, demanding they do something to protect her and her two young children. With thick, long, dark brown hair flowing past her shoulders, Maria is a beautiful 34-year-old single mother of an 8-year-old girl and 14-year-old boy. She lives in the Austin section of Chicago, Illinois, not far from where she grew up. Maria, according to family and friends, is one of the most positive, caring, and loving people they have ever had the grace of knowing. She works hard to support her family. She has goals in front of her she is chasing. She is well known as someone who, before anything else, puts her children first. The type of person who calls her brother every day just to connect and see how he is doing. The latest incident sending Maria into the police station this time happened earlier that Halloween day. The man she is reporting had thrown her to the ground, placed his foot on her chest, held her down, and threatened her. He let her up on this day, promising to return and continue the harassment. He gave no indication as to what has been triggering all of the violence, but Maria knew that he would never stop unless law enforcement stepped in and stopped him. He won't leave me alone, she tells police that early evening. She'd filed previous complaints in the days leading up to this, but has not heard anything back from police. Nothing became of this latest complaint filed by Maria, same as those before it. It felt to her as if law enforcement is completely ignoring her. They just weren't doing anything, which sadly seems to be the case more than not in domestic abuse and harassment allegations. You plead and you plead and you plead, but you get no response. On November 8th, just a little over a week later, Maria goes out to her vehicle and realizes one of the tires on her car has been slashed. It's him, of course. She knows this. 3 or 4 days later, she receives harassing calls and texts, beginning in the morning and going on all day long. A day after that, she's home when a rock is thrown through the front living room window. Again, She knows who it is. She heads back down to the Chicago Police Department and files additional complaints. She asks about her previous allegations and where those cases currently stand. Has he been picked up? Has anyone spoken to him? One has been closed, she is told. The other's suspended, which means the cases are considered still open, but are not being actively investigated. Here is a woman screaming out for help, and yet nobody seems to be listening. I find it not only negligent and disgusting, but almost criminal. In Cook County, Illinois, during that same year, Maria Roque is fighting for herself, her children, and doing all of the right things in order to protect them from this madman. 28,000 others filed for protective orders. Maria has a twin brother who has publicly shared that his sister, his other half, has always been someone full of life and love, not only for her young daughter and son, but her large family. Over the course of about 6 weeks, Maria filed over a dozen police reports and complaints against this same guy, who is not only obsessed with her and will not leave her alone, but continues to threaten Maria and has shown he will even resort to violence to get his point across. On November 24th, Maria heads back down to the Chicago Police Department to file yet another complaint with video evidence in hand. The same guy, she says, setting her car, which she generally parked in the street in front of her home, on fire and walking, not running, away. So by this time, he has thrown a rock through her window, put his boot to her chest as she is on the ground, all beyond threatening and harassing her over and over, day after day. And now, he's torched her car, and she has video evidence to prove it. This car was special to Maria. She and her twin brother had bought the same cars, twins with twin vehicles. It is a simple gesture to show how much love they shared and that bond twins have between them. When she inquires about that latest report of her car being lit on fire, Maria is told they suspended that case as well. So they are, once again, not even looking into it. Let's step into empathetic shoes for a second. You're living your life, doing everything you can to make ends meet, working hard toward your goals, raising 2 kids on your own, and someone shows up one day and begins tormenting you, making your life a living hell. You are constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering, when is he going to strike next? He will not stop. It's relentless abuse and stalking and harassment. You take the steps you are supposed to by gathering evidence, filing police reports, and letting police know of his every move. You give them his name, where he hangs out, where he lives. But you get zero help. Cops don't even visit the guy. They don't even call the guy. Nothing is done. On November 28th, 30th, and December 8th, Maria files an additional 3 police reports. In one of those reports, she talks about how the man called her 32 times on one of those days. In the others, she mentions vulgar, expletive-filled texts she's receiving, all of which have a threatening tone about them. She is clear about what she thinks is going to happen next, that he will accelerate his behavior and become even more violent than he has already been. Not that burning her car to the ground or pinning her down with his boot or hitting her, or tormenting her, and throwing projectiles through her windows is not violent enough. But Maria is now concerned for her kids and herself, and that the worst might happen if he is not stopped. He is definitely leading up to something. She is certain of it. But again, police do nothing. Not a call, not a visit, not a summons in the mail. It's as if Maria is speaking, but they cannot hear her. This becomes so important when we look at the fact that Maria had in place a major protective order against this dude. Also known as a restraining order, it is a court-issued document protecting the victim from abuse, stalking, assault, harassment, and so on. But also important to point out, it is a piece of paper signed by a court, and if police will not honor it and arrest the person, it's worthless. So Maria looks deeper into the order itself. Again, the court granted the order and sent it over to the precinct where it is to be served if violated. Yet, Maria finds out the order has never been served to the guy. The sheriff's office took the order and seemingly put it in a drawer and forgot about it, and never even alerted the Chicago Police Department that there is an order in place. Epic failures here. I am feeling my blood beginning to boil a little bit here, so let's take our first break and come right back. I know I ask you this every week, but I just want to say something here. Since my Crossing the Line Presents limited series, 34 Fairview Road, has come out, we have been bad review bombed by people who don't want to face the truth in that case and who attack anyone who even questions that truth. So their leader has gone on to tell them to give the show bad reviews, 1-star reviews. And so that's what they did. I've inquired to Apple and other places about taking those reviews down because there are strict guidelines about that now, but it seems that it hasn't been done. So if you could, I'd appreciate a review of the show that reflects your opinion and your true feelings about what we're doing here. It would mean the world to me. So law enforcement fail Maria in every regard with that restraining order as the latter part of November passes. The delivery of the order itself fell on the Cook County Sheriff's Office. They are the law enforcement agency required to serve the guy, but they don't do it. Which then goes back to the Chicago Police Department not being able to arrest him for breaking an order that has not been served. I mean, look, can we make it any harder for a woman living alone with her 2 kids to protect herself? It's hard enough for women in domestic violence situations to come forward at all and report these crimes. And this story exemplifies the reasons why. This is the same story over and over and over again. It's maddening. Finally, on November 28th, the sheriff's office finds the guy and serves him the order. It's now official. If he steps anywhere near Maria, calls her, texts, anything, he is in violation of the order and subject to immediate arrest. Of course, he violates the order on the same day it is delivered to him, and for 2 days afterward. But nothing happens. He is not arrested. Maria even brings the Chicago Police Department video and documented proof of the guy violating the order. But they do absolutely nothing. One domestic violence expert CBS News spoke to about Maria's case said simply, the message law enforcement is repeatedly sending to Maria is this: you are going to have to do everything on your own. As unbelievable as this next part of Maria's story is, at one point, police tell Maria to go to the state's attorney's office and try to get an arrest warrant filed through them herself. Imagine the police, whose job it is to protect, serve, investigate, collect evidence, and arrest people, tell a woman who is being grossly and violently abused and stalked and harassed to go do their job. Go see if you can prove to the state's attorney what he is doing and have them draft an arrest warrant. That is what Maria is told. When CBS looked into how many times Maria is actually told to go and investigate the case herself, collect all the evidence, and take it to the state's attorney, they find 6 separate instances. So Maria is told a half dozen times to develop her own case, her own arrest warrant on a guy violating a restraining order. It's unconscionable and mind-blowing to think this is actually a fact in this case, that this actually happens in the real world. So now, faced with this tremendous burden of protecting herself and her children and not being able to convince police to do their jobs, Maria is exhausted and frustrated and terrified of what is going to happen next. Law enforcement have given this guy a clear and direct message to do as he wishes without any legal repercussion. The guy has a license, essentially, to treat Maria any way he wants to. It's now December 13th, 2023, a frigid Chicago morning. It's still not quite light out yet. Maria steps out of the house with her 8-year-old daughter and buckles up the child in her new car. After strapping the seatbelt around the girl, she tells her she'll be right back. In the Ring video, you can see that as Maria is heading toward the door and walking up the stairs, a man comes into the picture, running up behind her. A few days before this, her tormentor had texted Maria with a warning. I have a surprise for you, a gun. She tells this to the Chicago Police Department. They do nothing. As Maria is walking up a few flights of stairs leading back into her house, the man catches up to her. You can hear Maria scream in that Ring video. It's chilling. No, help. My daughter is in the car. In fact, Maria's daughter is looking out the window of the car, watching all of this unfold before her eyes. It's important to note here, this is not just some random dude. He is the father of Maria's children. He pushes her down as she is screaming and pulls out that gun. Maria runs from those steps toward the street. He fires the weapon several times, hitting Maria Roque in the shoulder, thumb, and fatally in the chest. As the man takes off running, Maria's 14-year-old comes out of the house, sees his mother on the ground, bleeding to death, and this child begins doing CPR. An entirely avoidable, preventable, violent murder, most of which is caught on Ring video and committed in front of her children, bringing a deadly end to a situation the victim herself had foreseen, not for a few days, but months. But nobody in law enforcement did anything to help Maria Roque. In fact, I would argue they went out of their way not to help this woman. One of the more incredibly sad and devastating circumstances here with this murder is that an 8-year-old girl watched not only her father murder her mother, but also her brother try to save her mother. She is having nightmares, Maria's twin tells CBS News, speaking about Maria's daughter. This area of Chicago is a neighborhood called Austin. The crime rates here are 136% higher than anywhere else in the United States, with violent crime rates 167% higher. So Maria was not the girl crying wolf. Police knew how deadly and violent the area is, and they still would not take her seriously or put one resource, not one, toward protecting her. I don't dog police much on this show. All of my longtime listeners know this. But this has to change. Accountability is one thing, but a complete overhaul is another. And this shit needs to be done in this situation as soon as possible. If this is the sort of treatment Maria received, you can bet your ass other women are in the same position with the same precinct as well. Of course, right on cue, after Maria's murder, with her ex-boyfriend, Kenneth Brown, well known to police, on the run, the Chicago Police Department step out and ask the public to help them find Kenneth Brown. They are now suddenly involved in Maria's case, as she lie on a cold slab in the morgue and her 2 children are overnight motherless. To be ignored over a dozen times after you present evidence of violence coming your way, I feel makes you complicit in this crime. Maria's case needs to be studied. Some sort of Maria's Law needs to be implemented. This should not be allowed to happen in this country, ever. The public image cleanup begins, in my opinion, immediately as the Chicago Police Department publicly say they had issued an arrest warrant for Kenneth Brown the day before he killed Maria. On the day she was murdered, police say, they had granted Maria an extension on the protective order she had. Big deal, right? They don't give a shit. All they care about is saving themselves now. Let's take one more break here. Be right back. Kenneth Brown is 44 years old in December 2023, as cops are now actively searching for him. He's a rough-looking dude with a long criminal history. Shocking, right? He has nowhere he can run, and they will catch him. The saddest part about covering this case beyond the obvious is that I could dedicate more than a year's worth of shows to this same exact story. We hear this narrative over and over again, and yet nothing is ever done about changing laws to make women safer in this country within domestic violence situations. All I hear from bureaucrats and politicians looking to be reelected is that we need to do better. And yet they don't do better. We hear how we should elect new officials in order to get things done. We elect new officials, and still, nothing ever gets done. Women keep being violently abused and murdered within these situations. It's as if nobody gives 2 shits about these people. Truly, they do not care. On December 29th, members of the Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force locate and arrest Kenneth Brown. Seems they brought out the big guns for that testosterone-fueled arrest of the man after doing nothing to protect his victim for months as she pleaded and pleaded for help. Now they got a task force involved. Before she's murdered, Maria Roque couldn't even get a cop to call Kenneth Brown. Couldn't even send a cop over to Kenneth Brown's house and point a finger in his chest and tell him to leave her alone. Nothing. But now, the Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force arrests the guy. One of the most harrowing aspects of the case in the aftermath is what Maria's son told his uncle one day, Maria's twin brother. I tried to save her. The 14-year-old kid there. Kenneth Brown is officially charged with first-degree murder. He remains in jail with no bond, and his case is awaiting a resolution. There is no way Kenneth Brown gets away with this murder, yet that does not really matter when you have a murder that should have never happened and a legal system in place to prevent it, allegedly culpable in that murder. Maria's story is a story of boundless love, loss, willpower, and negligence. Maria Roque did everything right. The system let her down and contributed to the trauma her family and children will face for the rest of their lives. My heart breaks for this family, and I am appalled at the way in which Maria Roque was treated by those in place to protect her from a monster like Kenneth Brown. It makes me wonder, had Maria bought a gun legally and killed this son of a bitch one day when he attacked her, would she now be facing charges in such a backwards system that seems to protect abusers? The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-7233. They can and will help. If you are having trouble with someone, please, please, please call them. It's all anonymous and private. No one needs to know but you and them. Please subscribe to Crossing the Line wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review of the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. I'm doing this show independently now, free from any corporate or big podcasting media company involvement, which allows me to bring you more of the content you want to hear and have asked me for. This is completely our show. Reviews and subscriptions really help. You are my public relations and social media team now, and without your help, I could not do this. And that support, I must tell you, means everything. It's incredibly humbling. And I want to thank each one of you for listening. We can grow this show together, which will allow me to do even bigger things with it. If you go to crossingtheline.biz or mwilliamphelps.com, you can contact me there to suggest cases or just say hello. And look for me across all social media platforms at M. William Phelps. That's the @ symbol in my name, M. William Phelps. That's it for this week. Be safe. Be aware. Sources for this episode include a great story and example of excellent reporting by CBS News Chicago 2. A follow-up story to that written by Marissa Perlman and Michelle Youngerman. A young Chicago mother shot to death, how the system failed her. May 20th, 2024. Suspect charged in murder of mother by Jeremy Bizzle. CBS News, December 31st, 2023. I also used court documents and affidavits. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinas, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.